we're here to launch a global coalition that has been endorsed by a list of organizations, the Davis Harvey Peace Institute and other major international organizations, aimed at forcing the United Nations Human Rights Council, which will be holding on the 25th of February, 2019 in Geneva, the 40th session, to send a fact-finding mission to the southern Cameroons, otherwise known as Ambazonia, to investigate the atrocities that are being committed. I want to highlight on the atrocities and the situation on the ground. Even though we've watched the video and we've seen a lot of brutality and human carnage that is taking place in that part of the world, I want us to understand that the struggle of Ambazonia is for basic human survival rights. It is for the right for self-determination, and of course, it is for the right for a sovereign Ambazonia and the right for people to own their own land and take control of their destiny. And this fight for basic rights, which are clearly spelled within the International Declaration of Human Rights, have always been carried out by the people of Ambazonia using the non-violent approach, strictly a non-violent approach through protestation. This has been taking place for so many decades, even before the independence of Cameroon. So, in 2016, October 2016, the quest for Ambazonian rights for survival, the right for self-determination, and the sovereign right to take control of their land and their own destiny reached a hallmark, and the people decided, teachers, unions, and other unions, trade unions, took in the streets, the lawyers, of course, to protest for these human rights. And of course, the Cameroon government decided to intervene in a very awkward way through a systematic and ruthless military campaign. And through this systematic and ruthless military campaign, we find ourselves in an unfortunate circumstance. At the moment, we have more than 400,000 internally displaced persons in Ambazonia. We have about more than 200 villages have been burned down by the military. There are more than 2,500 activists have been adopted. They are in jail, and following the video that we just watched, refugees that ran away from problems into Nigeria are being adopted by the Cameroon government in complacency or through the collaboration of the Nigerian government back to Cameroon, where they are in dungeons under inhumane conditions and are being tried in the military courts. I wish to let the House to know that at least today will be the third time that these leaders, Sisiku Ayoktabe Julius, who happens to be the face of the Ambazonian revolution, and as of today, while launching this coalition, we also launched the recognition of Sisiku Julius Ayoktabe as the face of the Ambazonian revolution, the face of humanity, and the face for the right for survival. He was adopted with 10 other activists at the Naira Hotel in Nigeria on the 5th of January 2018. So Besides that, there have been ongoing systematic internet shutdown. When the crisis started in 2016, the government shut down internet for more than 100 days in order to carry out atrocities that the world will not see. We have more than 60,000 refugees in Nigeria, and according to international organizations, the situation escalates by 40% every month, which means that statistics that have been taken in maybe 3 months ago will not be the same today, or yesterday will not be the same. Just yesterday, the government, the military, arrested hundreds of university students at Boya University yesterday, and they were being taken for detention. In cities like Manfred, where representatives of the church, the clergy are being killed. In Bamenda, students are being abducted following using different tactics, especially the government militia. More than 87 school children were abducted in Ikwem. And the government always played a role in making sure that the world should see this. Why are we in this situation? It's because the United Nations High Commission for Human Rights have tried on 2 occasions to get into Cameroon, specifically in Ambazonia, to investigate these atrocities. But the government of President Paul Biya has always turned down their request and blocked them from investigating things that have been happening in that part of the world. It is in this backdrop of the worsening situation that a coalition has been launched by faith leaders and organizations, by leaders of human rights and peace groups, to force the Cameroon the United Nations to send a fact-finding mission to Cameroon, particularly to Ambazonian territory, to investigate these atrocities. We really believe that with such a high-level fact-finding mission being endorsed at the 40th session of the United Nations Security Council that will be taking place in Geneva on the 25th of February 2019, will bring a halt to the violence that is taking place in this part of the world, and will help to save souls. We believe that the United Nations has the mandate to do this and to make this happen. As a coalition that has just been launched today, we will be fully monitoring the situation. Whatever happens at the 40th session of the United Nations Council, we will be monitoring the situation, and we hope that other organizations will come on board to support this initiative. Thank you very much.
Gilead has always been an activist in human rights, and currently working as a manager in Norwegian People's Aid here in South Africa. She's also a board member, as indicated. And without waste of time, Gilead, would you come and share your views on the challenges of Amazonian people? And I'm hoping that definitely the human rights will listen to our call and make intervention. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning, everyone. Good morning. I know there are pictures of people that have been killed, but it doesn't mean that we are at the mortuary or anything like that, right? So, I've been asked to talk a bit about the role of the coalition, the role of civil society. I'm a civil society activist, and I've been working in the civil society sector for many, many years. But luckily for me, I'm also an Ambazonian. So this is key in my heart, the struggle for self-determination by the people of Ambazonia. As you know, we We are here because this group of civil society activists and organizations, and this includes organizations in Cameroon, organizations in Ambazonia, grassroots organizations, it includes faith-based organizations, international peace organizations, that are really worried about the escalating violence in Ambazonia. And the idea is that with this concern in mind, as civil society, what can we do? We are lucky to have comrades or solidarity partners across the world. As you know, this same conference is happening in Geneva, same time. We are also having the same in New York. And the reason for that is that the world needs to know about what's going on in Ambazonia. It's not something we would just sit here in South Africa and talk about it. For the world to know about it, we've got world institutions like the United Nations that is to hear about it. Within the United Nations, they've got what you call the Human Rights Council, which is made up of elected countries. Yeah? So the UN sits and elect countries that they feel have a track record of human rights, clean human rights track record. And we are lucky that South Africa is one of those. So South Africa sits in that council. And this council sits twice a year, so they'll be sitting in February, and they'll be talking about human rights abuses in the world. So, of course, as civil society, we have a responsibility to help them, to tell them where civil society, where violations are happening in the world, especially because they happen in countries like in Amazonia, where the government puts in a lot of resources to prevent these violations to go out to the public. Be it preventing, we have young journalists that have been arrested for reporting on the issue of Ambazonia. So we know that the government puts in a lot of money, a lot of resources to ensure that the story of the people of Ambazonia does not go out. So as civil society, we've got the responsibility to make sure we get our facts right. We've been lucky over the past few months. We've had big civil society organizations like Amnesty International and Human Rights Watch. They have the responsibility to report human rights abuse. So they put an eye on our case. Of course, we can argue about their facts because it's important that when you as civil society, you are reporting on a conflict, try and get both sides of the story. Be careful about the narrative you're portraying. You shouldn't, the government of Cameroon would call activists in Amazonia that are fighting for the right to self-determination. You can't call them armed separatists, and as civil society we take that narrative and call them armed separatists. That is just wrong. As civil society, the people have decided to call themselves Ambazonians. That's our responsibility to respect that right of the people. So we have decided that with other civil society groups across the world join hands and respect the voices of the people of Ambazonia. How they want to be called, what is it, understand their struggle, and then even as media we report it properly. So the Human Rights Council meeting takes place February 25th, and it goes on for a couple of weeks. For us, it's about how do we influence such a process, and there are a couple of ways we can do that. The first one is today we're writing a letter. Part of this process is that we're submitting a letter to the Human Rights Council to request a fact-finding mission, as my former speaker mentioned. We're asking them to send a fact-finding mission to the Cameroons, particularly to Ambazonia, because it's very easy to request a fact-finding mission. And there are two things the government can do. The government could say, the government of Cameroon can say, no, we don't want it. If this was the Security Council, that will pass, you won't go. But because it's the Human Rights Council, even if the government says no, the Human Rights Council, it depends on the vote of the members, which are about 47 members. If the members, majority says yes, then the fact-finding mission is going to take place, irrespective of the Cameroon government saying yes or no. The second thing the Cameroon government can do, the mission can get on the ground and they decide to take control of the mission, which is a very common mechanism for dictatorial regimes, where we will receive you, so we'll be in control of the situation, right? So Cameroon is made up of 9 provinces. 2 provinces are facing these challenges where people are being massacred. We are screaming that there's a genocide going on in these 2 provinces, which according to Cameroon is their province, according to Ambazonians is their country. Now the Cameroon government says, look, I've got 10 provinces, I'll take you to this other, I'll show you that there's no problem in Cameroon. So they can control the narrative by taking the mission to where they think, there is no. So as civil society, it's important that we create partnerships, coalitions with people on the ground, so that the narrative is not only given from the side of the government of Cameroon, we get it from civil society because civil society is supposed to be objective. We get it from our media because media is supposed to be objective. So our reflection, our narrative needs to go beyond what the government says. And we need to then lobby key constituencies, which will be other governments. So yes, the letter is one thing we can do. We can request the UN Council to send a fact-finding mission to the Cameroons, particularly in Ambazonia. We can lobby when South Africa, and as I said before, South Africa is one of those countries that is seen as upholding human rights in the world. One of the top countries that uphold human rights, right? So we can speak freely, freedom of association, freedom of the media, it's all here. So as activists, as civil society, as Ambazonians in the diaspora, we have a responsibility to lobby the South African government who sits in this council to also raise the issue. So we need a country. When they are in the Security Council meeting, somebody needs to say, can we investigate what's going on in Ambazonia? The question is, if people don't know about it, who is going to raise it? And like I said before, the government has intentionally made sure that the story does not go out there. So it's important that as activists, we engage with the South African government as well, and hence talking to South African government, alliance partners, talking to South African government, human rights activists or human rights organizations to come on board, and then meeting with the Department of International Relations, DECO's committee that is actually going to Geneva. It's all part of the process. So yes, we're having this press conference. We see the press as a key stakeholder in terms of transmitting the message that we have. And there are other stakeholders like NGOs or human rights organizations, and key stakeholder will be the South African government, how we ensure that this is tabled in the council. It's one thing to just for South African government to stand up and say we condemn what's happening in Ambazonia. It's another to do that in a meeting where they have a responsibility because they're sitting there as a group of people that are protecting human rights in the world. So it's easier for the South African government to raise an issue in a meeting like the Human Rights Council. So key for us would be how we advocate and lobby, but most important, how we communicate our information, making sure that this information is gotten from the right source, it's not distorted by the government in question, and that we take the message to the UN Council itself. So it's a process, and we would like to really thank everyone that is here today. We are looking forward to taking this process forward. We are looking forward to the Human Rights Council raising and prioritizing a fact-finding mission to Ambazonia. Somebody was asking me, why do you want a fact-finding mission in Ambazonia? We need to stop the violence that's going on right now. I think for me, every day when you wake up and you look at pictures and videos of people beheaded by the military that is fully armed, it is sad that as a human rights activist, there's nothing you can do to prevent people from dying, you know. So it's important that we send a fact-finding mission, one, to show evidence that this is really happening, because just telling people and showing them a picture is not good enough, and the government can argue, no, this is not happening. So we need people to go down and show that this is happening. And we are really asking for a high-level delegation. We don't just want government to send people that will be sent back from the airports, because we've had cases, we had South African activists that have been to Cameroon and they were sent back from the airport because of the fear of passing information, you know. So if this human rights, since it's the most important human rights forum in the world, so they have a responsibility to identify the most important people in the world, and then we've got former presidents that should be able to walk into that country and be part of a mission that can bring us the real facts on the ground. And with these facts, we can then ensure this accountability, because at the end, we want accountability from the perpetrators. So if we continue to leave this the way it is, there's unaccountability from the perpetrators, people continue to die every day. So I thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Gideon. Our next speaker is going to be Johan. Johan is the director of the Geneva-Switzerland Peace Institute of Southern African Bishops Conference. He also previously served as the country director for the Jesuit services. Johan.
Thank you, Joseph. I think Gillian and Patrick have said a lot of what needs to be said, and I think I just want to add on a little bit and make 2 points to clarify and expand a little bit on what they've said. Gillian spoke a lot about separatist movements, and this whole conflict in Ambazonia is portrayed by the media and by disinformation from the Cameroonian government as a separatist movement of people who want to break away and form their own country. That, strictly speaking, is not true, and I just want to briefly sketch the history. Cameroon as a whole was a German protectorate, a German colony before the First World War. After the First World War, it was divided into British Cameroon and into French Cameroon. The British government ruled British Cameroon, which is now what is known as Ambazonia, and the French ruled the rest of the country. I think it was, in what year was the referendum? Around 1967, at the time when Cameroon became independent. There was a referendum held, and people were given the option to vote where would they want to be a part of. And the people in the northern parts of Ambazonia actually voted to become part of Nigeria, and they were incorporated into Nigeria. The referendum was flawed, the voting paper was in French, very few people understood it, it was not valid, and so the impression went out into the world that the people of southern Cameroon voted to become part of Greater Cameroon. That is not true. We are not dealing here with a separatist movement. I think if one had to look at a historical parallel, we are dealing with something similar to the situation in Namibia. Namibia was also a German trust territory. After the First World War, South Africa administered it, and then it became independent. So Ambazonia, the struggle that the people are fighting for, is not separatist. That is disinformation being spread by the Cameroonian government. It was always independent. It was forcefully incorporated into French Cameroon during a referendum that was held in 1967. Then the second point I briefly want to make, and Gillian and Patrick have spoken about human rights abuses, and we are dealing with terrible human rights abuses. 200,000 people as refugees in Nigeria. Gillian mentioned the figure of 400,000 displaced internally, beheadings, villages being burned down, and so on. And it's good and well to say we have to call the Cameroonian government to account and let them speak, let them justify their actions, and a fact-finding mission would be welcome. But I think we should go deeper, and we should look at what are the actual causes that are fueling this conflict. And unfortunately, in Cameroon, you have very similar situation to what you have in Kivu North Province, in the HRC, and in Southern Sudan. The key factor that is driving the violence is economic interest by big oil companies. What wasn't said today, the film briefly made reference to economic interests. Cameroon, Ambazonia lies on the Bay of Benguela, and that is one of the richest oil producing areas areas in the world. There's the Niger River Delta in Nigeria, Gabon has oil, Angola has oil, and some of the richest oil fields in Africa have been discovered off the coast of Ambazonia. Just to give you the exact figures, at the moment, despite the conflict and despite the fact that oil production hasn't fully taken off to the level it has in Nigeria, the offshore oil wells off the coast of Ambazonia are currently producing 100,000 barrels of crude oil per day. It was initially exploited by Total, the French company, and in 2010 they gave their share of the Amazonian oil to a French company called Perenco that was founded by Mr. Hubert Perraudot, a French multimillionaire. They are currently exploiting 60% of the oil reserves off the coast of Amazonia. The remaining 40% is being exploited by a Chinese company called ADAX. So, as in Kivu North, as in South Sudan, oil is at the root of this conflict. And I think when we go for fact-finding missions and exposing the interests of those who are fueling this conflict and the atrocities, it's not just the Cameroonian government and the French government and those that support them that have to be held to account. But the role of Perenco and ADAX, the oil companies who are enriching themselves, must be exposed as well. Because one can ask oneself the question, Cameroon is not a very wealthy country. Where does the Cameroonian government get the financial resources to arm its military and to send them into Ambazonia? So, just the point I want to make, yes, the Cameroonian government and those that support it have to be called to account. Let's look deeper, let's look at the economic interests, French oil companies that are profiting from the exploitation of oil off the coast of Amazonia and who are getting rich. Let's make that part of the bigger picture of this inquiry that we are pushing for. Thank you.
Thank you, Johan. I'm trying to see if we can get it before 12 o'clock. So we're trying to see if we can finish this press conference the soonest. Our next speaker is Magdalene Musami. She's the founder of Women's Justice Foundation. She also is a former member of Parliament of South Africa, an international human rights lawyer, and the founder for this particular organization that's mentioned, which is Women's Justice Foundation, a long life champion for social justice and human rights. She has been also involved in the advocating for the oppressed people of Western Sahara and the Palestinians. She resigned from Parliament, as I said, she's a former member of Parliament, and now she's practicing full-time. She's practicing at Magdalene Musami Attorneys. And ma'am, you're welcome. You can come with me. Thank you very much.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you for having me. I think there's a wonderful thing when you see people come together in common interest, particular interest of those who are struggling outside of yourself. There are a couple of things that I want to raise, and I want to raise them, I think, in the spirit that it has been raised that, okay, fine, what would a fact-finding mission do in Cameroon? Now, let me take you into a comparative analysis of what transpired in the Western Sahara. The Western Sahara in 1975, there was a resolution that there would be a referendum. The king at the time agreed on the referendum. Sent through MINURSA. MINURSA went through to go and investigate what are the conditions. What transpires 45 years later? Nothing. There's still no solution. The referendum has not yielded or they haven't had a referendum. They still refuse, Morocco refuses to go to the table on a referendum. So I think one of the things that we must be able to do is not place emphasis only on one approach. The emphasis has to be multidimensional. We have to look at the role and the state of reality that Cameroon is a member state of the African Union. And what is the African Union doing when it comes to crisis in Africa? It sits, it folds its arms, it allows Morocco to become a member state. Morocco which openly creates conflict and disrespects the constitutive act of the African Union. Now there is this crisis in Cameroon. People are apologizing to these people and to those people there and whatever else because there is a balancing for the purposes of economic salvation that is existing amongst the French in the area. And the instigators that you will find 90% of the time is France. France intervention even in the AU, which is why the AU remains silent. So I agree that yes, indeed, there has to be a submission that must be made to the UN HRC.
But what does the fact-finding mission then result in? You know, there was a point when in the Western Sahara, and I'm drawing the parallel so that we are able to understand why some things that we do, we must do them tactically differently in other situations. Same scenario of self-determination and creating that kind of a clarity between the Amazonians and the French-speaking Cameroon. And in the Western Sahara, what then happened was that there was a special envoy. There were 3 special envoys that went in. One guy openly says there is no possibility of the issue in the Western Sahara finding a solution. A special envoy. Number one, you have these refugees, you have these attacks that are going on, you have displacements. What is Nigeria saying? What is Nigeria's interest? What are they saying? What is the neighboring, even though Cameroon is not a member of ECOWAS, but what is ECOWAS saying? Because the issue is, if it's an economic issue, then you need to have that regional interface. Not just the regional interface from ECOWAS or the African Union, but SADC. We have to understand what are the regions saying. Have we then been able to build and advance a solution before we, or whilst we are concurrently going to the United Nations? Are we holding the AU accountable? How are we holding the AU accountable? Pan-African Parliament sits across the street in Madrid. There needs to be protest. There needs to be active grassroots participation. And that is where the reality and the lines will be drawn. You don't want to have territories that are occupied and territories that are unoccupied. You don't want displacements, the kind of murders and the gross violation of human rights in the continent. It feels like colonization is something that we must fail to forget, or we must forget for the purposes of the colonizer. And what then is the role of that colonizer to date? What then is the role of the French in Africa to date? What is the interest of the French? It still exercises its interest to a large extent. I think for me the critical issue is one, what are our regional and our continental structures doing, holding accountability? The separation, I want us to apply our minds and ask the question, the separation, would it work equally as that of North and South Sudan? What positive results yielded from the North and South Sudan project? Are we sure that we will be in a position that independence and that protection of the economic reserves or the mineral resources that are there are going to belong to the people? Here's an example. The occupied and unoccupied territories, there is a wall, the biggest wall, bigger than the Great Wall of China, that was built by Morocco. It's called the Baron, and that wall is built across the desert. So it's impossible to get from there are occupied territories even on the other side of the wall. The reality is that Morocco then goes and builds a hole in the wall. Okay? They steal phosphate, they steal fish, they steal everything. They drive through the wall. The Sahrawis will not come here. They will be, because there is now this. Remember that what happens in such situations is that the states re-emphasize their military power. Now this is what happened. 1.5 billion spent on military power in so-called peaceful Morocco, where you've created military camps. Now we need to understand and take it further. They have the hole in the wall, they drive with a truck with the goods in it, and then they drop it there. The goods via South African shores. So what are we doing in terms of our legal instruments and prevention and ensuring that we protect? Now when the Sahrawis go to engage on the issue, they come in, that's where the UN responds and sends in big peacekeeping forces to prevent a war. To prevent a war, but the issue is the theft does not stop. So I believe that the approach is correct. We need to use a multi-pronged approach in every possible way so that, and especially on the issue of oil. I mean, the issue of oil, and this is where we need to start joining forces. If we take the issue of oil and we take what is happening in Venezuela now with Maduro, and the reason that there is such an interest in the conflict, it is what then will lend itself to a weaker political system. If a federal government is what may make sense, then let us engage on the issue of the consequences of federal governments in Cameroon, so that it does not go from a state of an anarchic democracy. So those are some of the points that I wanted to make and to emphasize on the fact that this really, I think, is the way to go. But let's hold our regional structures and our continental structures accountable, and let's make sure that we're able to join hands with other struggles that are very similar in the continent, and then place pressure on the African Union to say we're not going to entertain this nonsense anymore. You can't have people who are sitting there as member states breaching a constitutive act. That is treason. It is treason. It's a gross violation of human rights. You are allowing yourself to smile with mass murders and taking us back. If you look at the numbers of people who are murdered, peaceful protesters, it's an absolute anarchical, cold-blooded situation of murder by the Cameroonian government. And if the African Union can say nothing, then it must find a place to hold these people until they come to their senses and the people's determination is ultimately realized. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I think it's important that one of the things that I just want to pull out in the whole presentation that have been made is that I think there's a need for effect finding. If we get facts, and then we know how we can respond and engage the government of Cameroon. But one of those is to say, how will they call on governments that are exporting arms or selling arms to Cameroon to retreat, to stop selling arms to Cameroon? And they can use the arms trade treaty as one of the areas that they can use. But also I think it's important that there's a need for protest, that we need to start calling for protest. And those protests should not only be linked to Pan-African Parliament, but also all the other structures where Cameroon represents itself. For example, the French summit that constantly happens every year. France calls all its colony together every year. There's a need for a protest to happen there, so that we can then put pressure not only on Cameroon but also on the international community to do something. Otherwise, I think what will happen is that African Union has got a tendency of saying who is giving us more money, and we listen to them. So usually African Union goes for the highest bidder, and unfortunately Morocco always contribute a lot of money to the African Union. So that's the reason why they brought them back. And if you look at internationally, what has happened is that it has created chaos for the people of Sahara. I want to open for questions, and I would like to ask anyone who is going to raise questions to introduce themselves, who they are and where they're coming from. I'll take a set of questions and then allow the speakers to respond. I think it's going to be number 1, number 2, number 3 at the back.
Conflict makers' narrative. I found a lot of submissions that are excluded. I think when I look at the African continent, this notion it is emanated from the perspective of extractivism. So I normally wonder myself, why there are always wars in the areas where there are highly economic activities, but within the areas where there are no, which are economic second, there are no wars. What are the causes? Now, the exclusivity now is on the matter of what are the roles, what are the roles played by the institutions that we have, that we had a mandate. We gave them a mandate to oversee the governments in the context of African sovereignty. You know, AU, across SADC, region, what informs the context of debate? I wonder myself that because in the security charter, there are emphasis on sovereignty, you know. So, okay, what makes Cameroon not to give the sovereignty and the liberalism completely to the communities of Ambazonia? Then, actually, some other last issue is the content of decolonization in the education system. Because when I look at the revolution, I find a lot of multi-complex issues. The infrastructure system, then how do you put the notions of economy without having a conducive infrastructure system? You know, your telephones, your roads, rail, etc. And then what comes is interest there? What makes those people divide? I also fail to find the diagnosis. You know, why? Then what informs the delegation to the United Nations? What are the recommendations? What are the findings? You know, what are the issues that are going to be taken there to work towards the recommendations and the remedies in order to affect all of this? To say now, if we need this, we think that now the systems of the education are not only the systems of the commodities, natural commodities. You know, this. Now, also the other complex issue is the OECD. OECD tells us about how the economy is performing in the African continent, but not telling exactly about the issues of extractivism. They don't tell us about that. Then how do we work around the core to decommoditize our economy or to refine our economies, then to create a movement within the African continent, and then to stop all of this migration. And then they don't really tell us about the impact that is done by the migrant labor from African continent. Thank you.
I want to say that the church is under attack. You know, the issues that we speak about today affect the church directly. And by extension, it affects the body of Christ. Over the last 2 years, as a direct consequence of what is happening in Ambazonia, the Catholic Church has lost 2 priests and a seminarian. Father Sok was killed in Moyuka, Father Cosmas Ondale was killed in Mountain, and a seminarian in one of the parishes in Bamenda. There is a lot of despair. Only a few months ago, the Bishop, Andrew Kia of my own native diocese, the Diocese of Mountain, expressed so much despair that actually, got me rattled, because in growing up, our communities and the Catholic Church are one. The Catholic Church was our only hope for access to medical care. It was our only hope for access to education. All these institutions are being destroyed. In Meiji, in the DLM, for instance, the only hospital, specialist hospital, very well equipped, has been destroyed, and that is the case in many other areas. So these things are happening, and I remember in the early 80s, about 81, 82, when there was the only change of government that ever happened in Cameroon. Some of us as Christians were worried and we were being very naive because we felt that, this change from, not worried, maybe happy actually, because it was a change from a Muslim leader to not only a Christian, but a Catholic. And therefore we hope that one of our own who appreciates the Catholic values, which are human and universal, would do better. Today, the church, our people, are under so much attack. The Bishop of Bafia died under terrible circumstances, and that has been swept under the carpet. So we sit here today in this room, at this cathedral, and we sit here facing the crucifix. If you remember what put Jesus there, that's exactly what the government of Cameroon is doing today. So my question, my comments, my appeal perhaps is to Johan, and before I carry on, thank you Johan, thank you Madeleine for your inputs, because I don't think we ever prepared for this. I really appreciate your insights, because it helps us to think a bit differently in terms of what we're trying to do here. My appeal to you, Johan, is to continue to use all the avenues available to you. For instance, the Southern African Bishops' Conference. Is the Pope? Is he aware of what is happening? Every single Pope has visited Cameroon at least once, including Pope Benedict in his religious bishops stay in office. There's a Papa Nuncio resident here who has an ear of the Pope. Is the Pope aware of what is happening in this very important district of the Church? We were taught from our early days in primary school about the 3 divine virtues: faith, hope, and charity. And when my own bishop, the bishop of my own native province, expresses so much despair, which is the exact opposite of hope, it means that even the church, which is the only place we go to seek refuge, is losing its own authority. So my appeal is for you to continue to use your good offices, and perhaps through the Papa Nuncio, perhaps through the South African Bishops' Conference, to bring the Pope's attention to what is happening, because we still believe that the Catholic Church has a role to play in this matter. It cannot be that there is a Catholic who is also the head of state of the country, and he's overseeing so much persecution. Our bishops have become social workers. Bishop Kia, Bishop Bibi, and the rest, all they do is collect aid, go across the border to help destitute people. Thank you.
Good question, that's nice. My question goes to Assistant Mackley. I want us to find out, because that's what has been boggling my mind, of the nature of the international organization. Does it not render international law absolute? That is of no use. Why would states, countries, organizations go and seek internationals, come together and say they want to protect, and then when it comes to time to protect, the same laws that were decided, and enacted to bring peace to the world, they sit and look at it. Does it not make the international law absolute? Thank you.
My question goes to Magdalene. We do quite a lot of diplomatic work with revolutionary movements and governments of different countries. We take with us the plight of our people. We show them videos of a genocide of extraordinary proportion. People are killed on a daily basis. Live videos of military shooting little kids as little as 7 years, raping girls, sliding the necks of people, including Samsoya, from where the name Samsoya Center of Human Rights and Democracy came from. The question to you is, why is it that every time we talk to these people, all they tell us is, the world order is funny, and we need to apply soft diplomacy. We've asked the Cameroon government to call for frank dialogue that addresses the root causes. How do you call a perpetrator, what we will call a terrorist state institution, to call the same people you're terrorizing on a table for frank dialogue? What else do we need to do? Because we have been to every place we need to be. We've been to Europe, we've been to the US. Our people everywhere are destitute. When will this come? Our people get killed every day. I mean, it's good, fine and good to come and share after sharing at the conflict, but the reality is that after speaking, we've lost at least 25 people killed by the same terrorist military. At least 100 people are going across the border. What do we need to do? A multi-front approach, but we're tired of self-democracy. Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Francis. I'm an activist, South Africa Community Mobilization Head. I thank all of you for this initiative, and I am standing here to appeal. I just want to comment, not a question. I just want to appeal. For your aim is to send a fact-finding mission to Cameroon. In many instances, UN will tell you they have sent a mission to Cameroon, and that terrorist regime has refused. I want to plead that technology has made it possible to get information. Like my brother just said, bishops are there, civil society are there on the ground, that you can get the information that you want. It will be waiting to send fact-finding mission. It might be too late. Our people might be wiped out of the face of the earth by the terrorist regime. We're meant to understand that UN gave Paul Biya and his terrorist regime until 31st of December to dialogue with Ambazonian leaders. He pleaded until March ending. His plan is to make sure he wipe all Ambazonians and tell the world that everything is back to normal. That is his plan. We can tell you from January, he has brought in more troops to kill Amazonians. That's somebody that the World Organization has told him to dialogue with Amazonians. Instead of finding solutions, his dialogue is force. From someone's profile, you can know who that person is. That's somebody that has been in power for 36, 7 years, and that doesn't want to go and wants to die in power. That person, you're supposed to know the kind of dictator that he is. We call him the Hitler of our generation. That's how we call him. I want to plead to all of you to use, your consciences, your good offices as you've started. That we work together with you. Please, we have no way to go. You are our hope. We are there to hold your hands, to take us to anywhere that you can go for us to find life and freedom. Otherwise, if you will be waiting to send fact-finding mission, like I said, that terror regime will wipe our people from the face of the earth. Technology is there that can help. Pictures are coming, churches, civil society organizations are there on the ground. You might still go there, that terror regime decides for you not to enter, as they refuse you in twice. Thank you very much.
For the language is my name. I'm an Ambazonian. I would like to thank the organizers of this conference because it really gives, particularly me, that opportunity to express what has been worrying me so far as this crisis in Ambazonia is concerned. There has been a lot of discussion about the actual number of internally displaced persons in Ambazonia. I witnessed firsthand what is happening in Ambazonia. It is reported that over 200 communities have been burnt down by the terrorist forces of French Cameroon. Now they say over 200 villages. I would like to make people to understand that the communities they are referring to as villages, majority of them are towns, but it is due to the underdeveloped nature of Ambazonia that people will tend to refer to these places as villages. The area, I'll call 3 places. One, the area where I come from, Mato, is hosting over 50,000 inhabitants. That cannot be a village. Bole, Pakundu, yesterday, the terrorist forces were there. They shot over 30 civilians in the market. The videos are all over the place. Yesterday, Bole is hosting over 30,000 inhabitants. That cannot be a village. These are just 2 communities I have named. Now, when they are reporting that over 200 have been burnt down, and in these communities, all these persons are living in the bushes. We cannot sit here and be talking of over 400,000 internally displaced. It is over 1 million. I just left Ambazonia. I know what I saw. Everybody, they are all in the bushes. So, this aspect of people reporting that it's 200, 400,000 internally displaced, please, that is a distortion. And it is not giving a true picture of what is happening. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'll be very brief. I'm just too worried, particularly about the international community. After about the international community, I'm talking about the African Union and the United Nations. My question goes to ask to inquire if there are no structures in place, or if there are structures in place, who are those who have to initiate or to instigate investigations in terms of the African courts and in terms of the Security Councils, because these are facts which we cannot escape from. We cannot call a spoon a state. These are realities, And we discovered that these structures are not functional. Are they really existing or they are paper tigers? Thank you.
Very much. I appreciate all the inputs and the interactions. I think from my analysis, I'm trying not to be. I'm trying to be cautious because I'm sitting in church. So you know, when you're sitting in church, and then you have to be disciplined. But the first thing is that the role of the Catholic Church is fundamental. So we have found an instrument that can be a leverage in the crisis. That is the first thing. So when we start to go into the issue of engaging on whether international instruments and structures are obsolete, we know that we must continue to persuade international instruments and international mechanisms that are there. That is a part of the process. The failure to deliver cannot be dependent on whether we wait, because the bureaucracy of the United Nations is it's phenomenal. You know, South Africa was fighting for a seat on the Security Council. It's called being a permanent member. That permanency is 2 years. There's nothing permanent about it. They had to go into a negotiation with Morocco, because Morocco sits with there's a group of 5 friends in the United Nations who ultimately take decisions. It's your France, your US, your Italy, Spain, and the UK. And Morocco is part of the friends. It's just a friendship. It's not a structure. It's just a friendship. A caucus. It's a side caucus. The reality is that we have to exhaust every opportunity that is available and report to the Pan-African Parliament, to the African Union, ask for observers. You know, one of the things that you won't find is the ability for international media to make its presence known, because yes, the Amazonian brother who spoke, it is, the picture will never be true. It will never be true. To slaughter and to kill for the sake of self-interest and economic interest, there will never be a true picture. But there also needs to be media observers that are sent in. There has to be, over and above a UN fact-finding mission, there has to be the African Union peacekeeping force that go in, the security aspects of the African Union in the interim, so that there is a multiple, and there must be a strong international media presence. I think that is extremely crucial, so that these things become, it draws the attention for a quicker solution. So no, I don't think that anything is obsolete. When we are faced with a crisis, we can either be dogmatic about how we want to approach it, and it is at times the pressure point that it reaches requires that kind of a response. But we can be pragmatic and still achieve the same outcomes. Now, I don't believe in soft diplomacy, economic diplomacy, cultural diplomacy. There's just too many forms of diplomacy. Diplomats don't know what they are doing themselves. That is the reality. There is just a general crisis. The other day, the Minister of International Relations was going and apologizing to embassies about something. I don't understand. When you are a sovereign state, you are calling embassies to apologize for decisions that you've taken. It's just not making sense. A frank dialogue does not have to be an isolated experience. That dialogue can be accompanied with protest and action. That dialogue can be accompanied with joining forces of like-minded, from like-minded struggle and mobilizing the ground. If there is going to be a continued attack and more lives are lost, or which is happening on a daily basis, what are we doing as a special petition? A special urgent petition to say, these are the crises, this is what is happening, go in there, intervene. The concern that I would want, can the people defend themselves and protect themselves without becoming victims of their own protection and falling on their own swords? And I think that is where the issue of the frank dialogue needs to come in. It can't be that we go back. It has to be issue and issue based. As it happens, there must be a constant pressure. There has to be pressure that is placed constantly, issue by issue, not cumulatively, of this is what has happened over the years, so that there is, what are you doing about it? There must be a pile of papers there in any international structure. And then yes, there are the structures like Amnesty International and all of those which have got the teeth to be able to put pressure. So I want to say that there's no such thing as, even a frank dialogue will not make sense to a diplomat. Because there's no longer, the world of diplomacy is becoming itself obsolete. It is useless. I don't know what diplomats are doing in order to enhance and enable working relations. Rather send them back home. That would be an approach that I would take. What are you doing here? You have a relationship with South Africa. There may be bilateral agreements. And if there are bilateral agreements that are compromising the people, go. We don't deal with murderers and we don't negotiate with terrorists. And it is my view that this is a new form of terrorism that is replacing the colonial behavior, because this is a terrorist colonialism. And then we call for the return of the ambassador of Cameroon to go back. And we did that. We did that when Israel was out of order, and at one point said to the South African ambassador in Tel Aviv, come home, I'm not going to make you sit there. So those are some of the things that we need to do, to say now and no further. So I don't believe that there's anything that is obsolete. I have confidence. We are moving closer towards, and the closer you go, the harder the struggle becomes, because the resistance on the other side. The issue is, we can't also be completely antagonistic towards the forces that be. We have to be able to say, fine, if this belongs to us, we'll negotiate with our people. So thank you very much.
I first just want to address what Mr. Ayuk said over there, and just to put you at ease, the Catholic Church is on board. The Dennis Hurley Peace Institute, which I'm the director of, is an agency of the Southern African Catholic Bishops' Conference, and we get regular updates from San Soya, and I feed all the information through to the Apostolic Nuncio in Pretoria, so he is aware of what's happening. He isn't the one who would be able to act. It's the Apostolic Nuncio in Douala. And we would have to sit with the Nuncio and with our Bishops' Conference and see how we can involve them to get the matter to the attention of the Vatican and the Holy Father. Having said that, I don't want to discourage people as far as the African Union or SADC or whatever is concerned. But if you look at what happened in the recent elections in the DRC, the Catholic Church is the only institution that spoke the truth, that stood for the truth. And in Cameroon it will be the same. I think that is our hope, not the AU and not SADC. If you know what happened in the DRC behind the scenes, even the South African government in SADC and the AU was trying to prevent the democratically elected decision of the people of Congo from being realized. So it really is only the Church. I think Joseph will know, Saint Augustine famously said that there is no salvation outside the Church. And it is a bit of a case of that. And having said that, Mr. Ayuk, yes, the Church is under attack in Cameroon, and it's not just in the Diocese of Mamfe and in Bamenda. You will know that there were armed attacks by unknown gunmen on Cardinal Samuel Kleder. He's the highest prelate, the highest office holder, and the chairperson of the Cameroonian Bishops' Conference. There were hand grenades and AK-47s shot at the building of the Cameroonian Bishops' Conference. So it is under attack and many more will be killed. But, you know, as Catholics we can also take heart. If they do get killed, they'll be beatified and canonized. So, you know, it will work out for better in the end. Just to get to your statement, yes, unfortunately there are certain figures that we have to work with, and the figure of 400,000 is the one that has been thrown around. But we are aware of the fact that official figures don't give any idea of what's really happening. We recently, if you go onto the website of UNHCR, you'll see that they say there are 60,000 Amazonian refugees in Cross River State in Nigeria. Now, that figure is the 60,000 who are living in refugee camps and who are registered with the UNHCR. But, you know, through the Catholic Network, we are working with Caritas in the Archdiocese of Calabar, which works in the whole of Cross River State. And our colleagues in the Archdiocese of Calabar say the figure of the United Nations is laughable. They say there's at least 4 times that many refugees in Cross River State in Nigeria, but they come and stay with families in their houses and their villages and so on. And it's conceivable that if you say 1 million are internally displaced, that's possible. So yes, you were there, you've seen what happened. Official statistics, you know, there's also a nice saying in English, they say there are lies, there are damn lies, and there are statistics. You can prove anything by throwing statistics around. We realize that the problem is a lot worse than it's made out to be, and maybe the statistics are being deliberately undercounted. Where does this figure of 400,000 come from? It comes from the Cameroonian government, and that's probably to make the world think that the problem isn't that bad. So, thank you for pointing that out as well.
Thank you very much. Let me respond to my comrade from the Right to Know campaign, because he spoke to me. You asked the question, the role of the African institutions, which I think Magdalena has responded to, that there's a lot that they need to do. And just to mention that we haven't sent the fact-finding mission yet. We are requesting that the UN sends a fact-finding mission. And I think it's important to also note that with advocacy, I think it's very key to be strategic. And by strategic, I mean the moment counts, right? So we are at a time where the UN is going to a meeting. Hence, this is centered around the UN Council meeting. The AU is going to a meeting. You organize something and send a letter to the AU's meeting. So yes, we agree that this requires a multi-pronged approach. We're very aware of that. And this is just part of a bigger process. This was specifically around the UN for sure, but we are very aware of the role that the African institutions have got to play. Very excited we have the church as a critical partner in terms of this process. And if you look at the signatories, a lot of them are faith-based organizations, which we are proud of. You asked if the issue is going to be tabled at the UN. That's our hope, and we are hoping that South Africa as a country would be tabling this issue, considering that South Africa is hosting a lot of the Ambazonians here. Our responsibility is to lobby the South African government. The responsibility of civil society in South Africa that are human rights focused is to join us in this lobby and to ensure that South Africa stands out as an African country that sees the need to respect human rights outside of South Africa. The other issue was, somebody mentioned, I can't remember now, about the fact-finding mission for the UN might be too late. And I think that's very critical, because the fact that we send a letter now to say that there must be a fact-finding mission, then the meeting holds doesn't mean that the meeting would agree and the next day there's a mission in Cameroon. So yes, it might be too late. Now, this coalition of civil society organizations that have come together are also aware. It's a global coalition. It's a beginning. We are launching it. We are calling on human rights organizations to come on board and join us as civil society organizations. The strategy is that if the UN does not respond as fast as we would like, we are sending our own fact-finding mission. So it is a very strategic fact-finding mission that will have to identify prominent civil society people, including former presidents, key clergymen, and try to send those people on the ground so that they can do the fact-finding. And part of this fact-finding, critical, will be to ensure the statistics that you mentioned, that it's been underreported, yes, but who is going to talk about it because these reports come from key organizations, right? So the voice that says it is what matters most often. So who said that statistic? People would ask, it's the UN, therefore it's right. It's a council of elders. We've got council of elders as the world, where most of the elder statesmen are sitting on. If they make a statistics, of course that's an important statistics. So those are some of the strategies that we would want to employ to make sure that we have a more realistic statistics that Ambazonians should be proud of. So we agree that it's a process, multi-pronged approach. We will have to target beyond the United Nations. And this is, it's just the beginning. I think we have a lot of work to do as Ambazonians, as civil society organizations. And we are really grateful that there are solidarity partners in this room.
There is what is called biopolitics, or some form of primitive accumulation. And primitive accumulation comes as a result of using those that do not have power to deprive them of basic livelihood security. And it is not by default that the New Age, which is a British conglomerate, signed a deal with the Cameroon government for oil exploration in Ambazonia for millions of dollars. It is also Perenco that Johan mentioned in his presentation, and other companies are doing that. That is exactly how primitive accumulation happens. Putting economic interests above humanity. And the media and other stakeholders that have come on board to try to give anecdotal reporting of what is happening on the ground has not helped. Hence, as the language mentioned, the distortion of statistics. The reality is far too serious. We've talked about the reality in terms of people killed, refugees. Let's talk about diseases that will occur. Women in the forest with poor sanitation, using leaves as sanitary pads. We need to think about that. So the ramifications are far too serious. So why are they doing this reporting manipulation? Amnesty International, Crisis Group, and Human Rights Watch, they always say, both armed groups, you cannot compare a conventional army with people with rudimentary tools. And of course, you should also know that these people, their livelihood depends on subsistence agriculture. Their tools, farming tools, have been seized by the government because they feel that these people are using their farming tools to defend themselves against the military. Where are we driving to? A hunger crisis. There will be famine in Amazonia. So the situation will be worse in months ahead. So the campaign, the global campaign, is today is just the launching of this campaign. I think Gillian tried to give some of the outcome of the United Nations behavior. If they continue with a lukewarm attitude, if they don't push forward this initiative of sending an impartial, a neutral, fact-finding mission to give accurate information and bring out a strategy to deal with this problem, this coalition has the capacity to send a fact-finding mission, to do other things that are required to bring a lasting solution to the Ambazonian crisis. So there are a lot of strategy in place. We don't want to remove the cat out of the bag or what, but this is a strong coalition of church representatives, legal representatives, human rights organizations working behind the scene. It's part of diplomatic offensive to make sure things happen. And I think it has been delayed for too long, and therefore there is actually a red alert, and things we must fast track things. We understand the concerns. Thank you.
What we are doing together here is that there's a call for action. There's a need for action, and that action should be urgent. And part of it, I think it's important that we are saying that one of those actions is the fact-finding that has to be organized by United Nations. But of course, there are other, fact-finding issues that have to happen as well. But also, I think it's important just to mention to the organizers that at the 25th, on the 40th, which is the 25th of February, when the UN Security Council sits, Human Rights Council sits, there should be a side event, and if possible, convince the Catholic Church to send a bishop to go and address, either through the World Council of Churches or whoever is accredited to be an observer at that committee to raise these particular issues. But also, I think it's also important that one of the issues that has to happen is that we need to organize protests and protest and protest. And these protests have to happen all over the world. They have to happen all over the world. And one of the target areas is France, the colonial master. There should be protests in France so that we send the message. But also, I think there is a need for petition and to petition even the African Union Peace and Security Council. It has to be petitioned to do something, to send even a fact-finding mission, to have its own facts and respond to what is happening in Cameroon. But also, I think it's important that we need to continue collecting data. The data is important so that we can present our case. And I think there is data that is out there. We need to collect it and consolidate it so that there is a document that can be used to lobby and do advocacy work. So I think it's important that we agree that we need to have action, and we need to take that action very soon. I would like to then take this opportunity to thank the presenters. Thank you very much for your presentations and for making your time, as well as I think the members of the media that have come through to listen, but also organizations that have been invited and responded to the invitation to attend this event. And we're hoping that you're going to continue supporting this campaign and this noble cause, that we can have the people of Ambazonia independent if they need to be independent, if they want to be part of Cameroon, whatever they want to have, we need to support them. I thank you very much. I'm told that there's some coffee after this event, and you can engage with the speakers individually. Thank you very much. I close the conference.
Honorable guests, today we're here to launch a global coalition that has been endorsed by the list of organizations, the Dennis Harvey Peace Institute, and other major international organizations aimed at forcing the United Nations Human Rights Council, which will be holding on the 25th of February, 2019 in Geneva, the 40th session, to send a fact-finding mission to the southern Cameroons, otherwise known as Ambazonia, to investigate the atrocities that have been committed. I want to highlight on the atrocities and the situation on the ground. Even though we've watched the video and we've seen a lot of brutality and human carnage that is taking part in a place in that part of the world, I want us to understand that the struggle of Ambazonia is for basic human survival rights. It is for the right for self-determination, and of course, it is for the right for a sovereign Ambazonia and the right for people to own their own land and take control of their destiny. And this fight for basic rights, which are clearly spelled within the International Declaration of Human Rights, have always been carried out by the people of Ambazonia using the non-violent approach, strictly a non-violent approach through protestation. This has been taking place for so many decades, even before the independence of Cameroon. So, in 2016, October 2016, the quest for Amazonian rights for survival, the right for self-determination, and the sovereign right to take control of their land and their own destiny reached a hallmark, and the people decided, teachers, unions, and other unions, trade unions, took in the streets, the lawyers, of course, to protest for these human rights. And of course, the Cameroon government decided to intervene in a very awkward way through a systematic and ruthless military campaign. And through this systematic and ruthless military campaign, we find ourselves in an unfortunate circumstance. At the moment, we have more than 400,000 internally displaced persons in Ambazonia. We have about 2 more than 200 villages have been burned down by the military. There are now more than 2,500 activists have been adopted. They are in jail, and following the video that we have just watched, refugees that ran away from problems into Nigeria are being adopted by the Cameroon government in complacency or through the collaboration of the Nigerian government back to Cameroon, where they are in dungeons under inhumane conditions and are being tried in the military courts. I wish to let the House to know that at least today will be the third time that these leaders, Sisiku Ayoktabe Julius, who happens to be the face of the Ambazonia revolution, and as of today